Okay, so we'll do a bit of setting up till about 5 past, and then normally anybody that is going to join us live would have joined us by then. And in the recording, people can pick it up as they have been doing and use it in whatever way, whatever time they want to. We're just checking in where we are in the week then. So Thursday today, so moving towards the end of the week. So last week on the Friday, we did a bit of technique I like to do there, which is just about trying to let go of the things from the week we don't need, be mindful of the things we need to carry forward, and just letting go really of anything that is on the mind that's going to cloud and get in the way. So we'll do a bit of that tomorrow. For today then, and on the Thursday, we'll just do a nice session today, just being with the moment, with the breath as the center of the experience. I often use that phrase, and particularly for a lot of you who are listening live with us today, you've done mindfulness with me before. But for people brand new to mindfulness, that can be quite interesting sort of thing to understand. Making the breath the center of the experience, the grounding point, the anchor point. So I'll do a bit of work on that today. And again, most of you that have been with me before on various courses, we get quite quickly into the mindful breath. But I often say the phrase, there are many good mindfulness activities where you sit with the natural breath. So do a bit of mixture of that today, and you can see, as always, where you lean towards. You know, the way I teach mindfulness is very much about it's your received sort of approach that is the key thing, trying different things, and then you working out what is better for you going forward. So do a bit of work using the natural breath, just as we do normally, but a bit longer. And then I'll give you some options then for just bringing the mind back. It might be with the bigger breath. Certainly we're going to flip and notice how the natural breath is for us inside, but also then we want to connect with things outside. So again, if you've been with me before, we talk about mindful movement, or particularly mindful walking. And we talk about just choosing a point A to B and really trying to notice what's in between point A and B as we're walking. And with that, I often teach to have two focuses, an internal focus and an external one. And the reason for that is because it's just different modalities, and get a bit psychological here, but it's different modalities in our attentional systems in the brain. And the mind likes novel things. So, if we're focusing on, let's say, we're doing a bit of mindful walking and I'm focusing upon heel toe walking, let's say, and my mind will do that 30 seconds to a minute. And then, of course, it starts to get bored. It starts to look for other things. It starts to wander, starts to worry, and all of the things we don't want. So just switching it to an external focus is just switching what we call modalities, just means the mind is more likely to accept that different modality and give that 30 seconds to a minute attention. And then we switch back and keep moving through. So today we'll do the same sort of thing. We'll use the natural breath, and we'll notice how the body is with that natural breath, the embodiment of it. And then when the mind wanders, we'll notice something outside of us as well. I'll give you the option to either just sit with the natural breath if you wanted to see how that is. But remember, there's more chance of the mind wandering with the natural breath than there is with a more intentional mindful breath rhythm. But sometimes, like we did yesterday, it's nice to let the breath go and then bring in the intentional breath when we notice the mind has wandered, just as that anchor point again, just to bring us back to now and to almost contrast the wandering mind or the wandering breath with the intentional mind and the intentional breath. So I did a bit of work with that today. See how it is for you. The direction of travel is always the same. Can we bring the mind to now, accepting that it's going to wander away from now? But the more that we just gently bring it back, the more we push our awareness into the features of now, the less likely it is to wander away in the first place. So as always, wherever you are, if you'd like to just make yourself comfortable, just happy in your personal space, closing your eyes if you want to, keeping them open if that's better for you. Always, as we work through these activities, these techniques, you do what's comfortable for you. Mindfulness is a very gentle approach. As long as we keep going in the direction of bringing the mind to now, we're going in the right way. So just relaxing into now. Let's see if we can be at home in ourselves for the next 15 minutes or so, whilst noticing everything that's going on around us, but noticing it in neutral. We'll do a bit of work on that today too. So let's take that first step of mindfulness, which is the awareness of right here, right now. And let's start outside of ourselves again. We're going to come back to this during the practice today. So let's set it up nicely. We've been using sound, we've been using body temperature, textures you might feel, absolutely anything. But for the next few moments, let's connect with and accept and observe whatever's going on around us. And as you're pushing your mind to the features of what you're noticing around you now, it's good to notice what we call novel distinctions. Where's the differences? So, for example, with sound, where I am, there's a lot of natural sound. There's the birds, there's the wind rustling gently through a tree. But then there's also some human-made sounds that come up now and again as well. We could just contrast the difference between them. Of course, we contrast the warm parts of the body with the cooler parts. That's good to do too. But if you're touching anything, you might notice differences in textures, smooth and rough parts. But noticing the novel distinctions of now is a good way of keeping the mind aware of now. Of course, what we don't want to do is bring in our own commentary, evaluation, and judgments. So it's very easy for my mind to slip into saying, well, the natural sounds are good, the human-made sounds are not so good, and then I might be annoyed by the human-made sounds, and so on and so on. With mindfulness, we want to accept each as they are. Both of them receive a neutral observation. Let's do the same then with the natural breath. Notice its features. We've been doing this all along if you've been with me before. We try not to change the rhythm. We're trying to take the mind out of the equation and just notice how the body is taking care of breathing all by itself. We can push our awareness into this breath. We can notice the pace of the breath. Maybe for you it's a faster breath. Maybe it's a slower breath. You can notice the depth of the breath too. Maybe for you it's a deeper breath. Maybe it's a shallower breath. We can notice the way that the body is moving with the breath. Rise and fall of the chest, maybe. Push your awareness a little bit deeper too. So, for example, I've just noticed even with my natural breath, I'm on a swivel chair and it just moves slightly with each breath, raising my feet a little as it does. See what it's like for you. And today we're going to sit with the natural breath rhythm a little longer. And as we do so, I want you to just move your awareness every 30 seconds or so from doing what we've just done, noticing the bodily sensations of this natural breath. And as you detect the mind wants to start to wander away, just shift it to outside of ourselves again, noticing the moment to moment environment that we're in. And again, as soon as you detect it wants to wander, bring it back inside again. And we've got that nice movement. Now, the mind probably will wander deeply. You might spot it, try to bring it back, but it will move into a wandering mode quite quickly. So again, when that happens, just bring it back whenever you can. Don't judge yourself, you're not doing it wrong. But it's there that you might want to use your bigger mindful breath just to snap the mind back. Do a few of those deeper breaths and then let the breath rest again back to its natural state. We've got some good time for this today. We can sink deeply into it. And every now and again I'll come back in with a little bit more advice and direction. Let's begin now seeing if we can sit with the natural breath, noticing it. And when you detect the mind wants to wander, switch it to outside of ourselves, to noticing that. And let's see how this is for us for a while now. And a couple of things you might have noticed already. One is whatever speed your mind is at in terms of wanting to wander away. For some of you, it might be very quick, and that's fine, just go with it. Just move modalities when you notice it starting to wander. For some of you, though, you might be able to hold your awareness longer on the breath or on the external stimuli. Again, just go with what your experience is like. And for those of you who have been on a course with me, you might find that your natural breath just naturally moves into your deeper mindful breath rhythm itself. Again, just go with it. We're just using it as a backdrop, but also as an anchor point to come back to when the mind wanders away. And as we continue to do this, you might notice the mind, body, and emotions just slowing down all by themselves. You might notice bodily tensions filling that space, grabbing your mind. Again, just try to let the tension go with the breaths. We have a great saying in mindfulness as we're doing an activity like this, which is we want to observe what's going on without being absorbed into it. And the absorbed bit is the mind wandering and commentating and thinking and judging. Remember, it's going to happen, so don't worry about it. In fact, where the mind wants to wander to is an interesting thing to observe as well. Remember, if it's a random thought, a thought that doesn't really mean anything, a peripheral thought, they're the easiest ones to try to let go. But if it's a more meaningful thought, just try to park it, just try to say to your mind, yep, that is important, and I'll deal with it after. But for now, it's okay for me just to point the mind at the breath or at what's going on in the environment right now. And with this kind of practice where we're anchored in the natural breath, sometimes the awareness can pick up other things as well that just need a bit of explanation. So sometimes it picks up other bodily sensations and rhythms. Like we said before, if you have somewhere that's painful or uncomfortable, sometimes it gets magnified to begin with. To shrink it back down, we just stay with the practice. But it's just filling that extra space. Also, people can sometimes notice their heart rate as they're sitting with their natural breath. Sometimes this causes anxiety, so if that's you, don't worry about it. Try to point your mind elsewhere if you do start to notice it. But also to notice the heart rate rhythm is nice because it's not steady, it's always moving up and down. That rhythmical nature we've tried to tune into with mindfulness. And this is where trusting the body becomes important. Hey, it's taking care of itself without our interference. We can trust it to continue to do that. The other thing that we can often notice doing this is the thoughts that invade the space too. So we have a saying in mindfulness most of you have heard many times, which is we are not our thoughts. We're not consciously thinking now, but our unconscious and subconscious thoughts are getting some airtime, and they might be weird, wonderful, scary, or embarrassing thoughts. Our approach is to treat each thought with neutrality again, and try to choose not to give them any more energy. Just let them float away. So far, we've done a lot of work on that first step of mindfulness, which is just being aware of now without changing anything, just accepting, noticing whatever's actually going on, going with the flow of moment to moment experience as much as we can. So we've been very purist in that sense so far. But as we draw to the end of this session, let's try to do a bit of that second step, bringing a positive change. Let's work with the body. As I said, just with the natural breath, often parts of the body just slow down quite naturally. But also with the natural breath, it's often that you're left with tension that you can feel a bit more of elsewhere. So let's just look out for that. And we'll do a little bit of a short body scan, trying to release that tension, ready for when we come out of the practice and for the rest of the day. So can we all just move into a slightly deeper breath than the natural one, please? Use the mindful breath if you're used to doing that deep, deep breath, but just a more intentional breath for now. And let's now notice the lower half of the body, please. Firstly, let's just look out for any sensations we can feel. And as we're scanning, if we notice anywhere that's a little tense, let's take a few deep breaths to notice, or tense like we've done in the past if you want to, on the in-breath. But then using the out-breath to be really assertive, releasing any tension away. For me right now, the lower half of the body is fine, but I have noticed that my shoulders have sort of stored up all my tension. So let's scan the upper half of the body too. Remembering the shoulders are really important. Back of the neck too is a common store of stress and strain. Wherever it is for you, if anywhere, just spend a few breaths now trying to release that tension. And then we can bring the awareness up to the face, just noticing the face and the forehead, trying to relax the facial muscles, release any tension from there. And from the forehead, we can move to noticing the breath once more. Noticing the features of it, how it sounds, how it feels, and how it's moving the body right now. And then to bring the mind out of the meditative state and back to its normal waking state, we just use slightly quicker breaths, raising the awareness, opening the eyes, having a stretch, a shuffle, a drink, whatever you need. Then coming back to your waking state. As always, we'll let the chat run for a couple of minutes more. If anybody wants to ask any questions or comment on anything, hopefully you've enjoyed a nice period of time just sitting, just allowing the mind to move from one to the other. Hopefully, moving us away from the wandering mind, the worrying mind, the commentary and the judgment. And in doing so, I hope that we've brought a little bit of balance to the day. Lovely. Thank you, Becky. Yep, nice one. Great. Yeah, do let me know whether you managed to focus well today, whether the mind was busy. Could it stay focused on the natural breath, the external things? Mike, yeah, interested. Yeah, just let it out. Absolutely. Thanks, Katronia. No problem at all. Thanks, Harps. Thanks, Patchonism. Let's see if we can take some of the techniques we've learned today out there into everyday life too. Coming back to a bit more formal time if we ever need to, taking a bit of time out. Just grounding ourselves once more, anchoring ourselves. Got lots of different techniques we can use in short bursts to do that. Debbie, yeah, very interesting. Yeah, Debbie's got an ankle injury. I hope it's on the mend well, Debbie. But yeah, certainly that will want to invade that space, won't it? But again, the acceptance of that, it's a real thing. At least your mind is not making that up. But what your mind can do, of course, is magnify it more than it needs to be. Hopefully, by doing these kind of techniques, we can push through that, keep the awareness on it so that it gets beyond the magnification and comes back down to where it needs to be, the appropriate level. Well, thanks so much again, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'll be back here tomorrow at noon. And yeah, we'll pick it up again. Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody.